Alpha of Ashes. A she-wolf cursed to never shift again falls into the territory of an exiled alpha. He swore never to lead a pack again, but the bond between them could either resurrect a kingdom or reduce both to ash. The night forest pressed in on all sides, a black wall of shadow and pine. Mia stumbled through the undergrowth, her chest heaving, lungs burning with the copper taste of blood. Every nerve screamed for her to shift, claws, fur, teeth, speed. Instinct clawed at her bones like a trapped animal desperate to break free. But the curse held her locked inside fragile human skin. She could feel the phantom ache of the wolf she no longer was, the promise of power, the raw freedom of the hunt, now ripped away from her. She would never shift again. She pressed a palm against a bleeding gash on her thigh and kept moving. Behind her, the echoes of pursuit had faded, but she wasn't naive enough to think herself safe. Her pack had cast her out, branded her broken, and sent her to die on the borders of the ash wastes. The air here carried a different weight, ash and ruin, whispered stories of a land that had once burned under the rule of an alpha so fierce that even the earth still remembered his name. Mia collapsed against a fallen tree, dragging in ragged breaths. Moonlight filtered through skeletal branches overhead, pale and merciless. She wanted to cry, but she was beyond tears. Too tired. Too bitter. That was when she felt it. A gaze on her. Heavy, piercing, ancient. Her head snapped up. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair catching the silver glow. He moved with a predator's grace, every step deliberate, his presence filling the clearing until the night itself seemed to bend around him. Her heart hammered. She didn't know him, but she knew what he was. Wolf. Strong. Dangerous. Lost little she-wolf, his voice was low, rough, like gravel dragged across fire. Or abandoned? Mia forced herself to meet his eyes. They glowed faintly amber, carrying both challenge and sorrow. Something inside her recognized him before her mind caught up with the stories. "You're him," she whispered. "The fallen alpha." His mouth curved, not in amusement, but in something darker. "Exiled," he corrected softly. "Names fade, but the ashes remain." The night seemed to still between them. And deep in her chest, something stirred, a pulse, a spark she hadn't felt since before the curse. A bond reaching for her, fierce and undeniable. She staggered back. "No. Not you. Not now." The exiled alpha tilted his head, watching her as if she were a puzzle carved from bone and fire. "Fate doesn't care for timing, she-wolf. And neither do I. 2K. Fate doesn't care for timing, she-wolf. And neither do I." "Then you'll forgive me for not bowing to either," Mia said, though her voice shook. Her leg throbbed. The cold had bitten through to marrow. She shifted her weight and nearly went down. He moved in a blur, catching her elbow. Warmth surged where his hand closed around her. Heat, scent, the press of strength, her body answered before her mind did, a treacherous rush of recognition. Bond. The word hissed through her like a struck match. "Easy," he murmured. "You're bleeding more than you think." "I'm fine." "You're stubborn." His gaze flicked to the tree lean. And loud enough to call every scavenger in the wastes. A distant howl answered him, thin and hungry. Mia swallowed. "If you're going to kill me, do it. Otherwise let go." He studied her, then eased her arm over his shoulder. "My territory. My rules. You walk, or I carry you. Choose." Arrogant. Efficient. She gritted her teeth and chose walking. The forest shifted around them, the path winding through charred stumps and black glass where lightning had fused sand to a scar. He moved like he knew every route, every hollow, each step the memory of a map. "You have a name?" she asked, mostly to keep from collapsing. A ghost of a smile. "Names fade." "You said that already." "Eric's," he said at last. "Eric's Vale." The name rang like a struck bell in the ruined wood. Even her pack had whispered it. The Ash Alpha. The king of the burn. Exiled for sins no one told the same way twice. Mia stumbled, he took more of her weight without comment. You're far from home, Mia. She stiffened. How do you know my? You smell of pine pitch and river stone. Northwoods. And you wear your grief like wet fur. They reached a ruin, a watchtower ribcage of stone, half swallowed by thorn and ivy. He led her inside to a chamber patched with hides, a crackling hearth, clay jars sealed with wax. The space thrummed with warding, a low, steady hum in her bones. Sit. He crouched by the fire, reached for a tin box, and drew out needle, thread, a vial of amber liquor. This will burn. I don't shift, she blurted, as if confession might change the shape of pain. Can't. Not anymore. Eric's hand stilled. Show me. She hesitated, then tugged down the neckline of her torn shirt to bare the curve of her shoulder and the nape of her neck. Ink-black sigils webbed her spine like frost, sharp, elegant geometry that pulsed with a dull, sick light beneath her skin. Eric's expression changed. Not pity. Fury, banked and old. Binding glyphwork, he said, voice flat. Priestcraft. Wolf quieting. Wolf killing, Mia said. It took my shift on a full moon. I felt my bones try to break and couldn't. I thought I'd die from not becoming. He cleaned the wound, poured the liquor. Fire ripped up her thigh, she hissed, fingers biting into the hide under her. Eric stitched with swift, neat pulls. His hands were steady as stone. Why? He asked. Because I refused. Her throat tightened. The Alpha wanted me mated to his son. I declined. Declined, Eric's repeated. He called it treason. She didn't say the rest, the circle of elders, the chant, her mother looking away. The wordless betrayal tasted worse than blood. They bound what they couldn't break. Eric's tied off the stitch, cut the thread with a knife that had seen war. Eat, he said, nodding to a bowl heaped with smoked meat and roots. Then sleep. The wastes listen when you cry. I didn't cry. You did, he said, unsurprised. Quietly. She ate because her hands were shaking too hard not to. He moved like a shadow, banking the fire, checking the wards. When he finally settled across from her, the amber in his eyes had cooled to iron. Thank you, she said. The words were small, humiliating. Necessary. Eric's inclined his head. Tomorrow you tell me who hunts you. I told you. You told me who cursed you. He leaned forward, elbows to knees. Hunting leaves a different scent. The air shifted. The wards thrummed once, deep and low, like a hound's warning in a closed throat. Eric's head turned. In the hearth glow, his canines looked a fraction too long. Not tomorrow, he said, rising in a single controlled motion. Now. They came like shadows pried loose from the trees, 3 men in patchwork armor, moonmetal glinting at wrists and throats. Not wolves, the way they moved lacked the music of it. Hounds bred for wolves, then, their weapons steeped in bitter herbs. Eric's didn't growl. He didn't posture. He simply stepped into the doorway, a wall of calm violence, and filled it. You're far beyond your master's markers. The tallest lifted a hand to show the brand burned into his palm, a stag's skull crowned in thorns. Mia's stomach dropped. Northwoods. Her pack. We're owed property, the man said. A thief and a traitor. Eric's gaze flicked to Mia, then back, unimpressed. You smell like carrion. The leader smiled without humor. Move, dog. Everything in Mia bristled. Don't, she rasped. They'll mark you. They'll call you. Exiled? Eric's mouth tipped in that almost smile again. Imagine. He moved first. No shift, no hull, just velocity, shoulder driving into the doorway thug, forearm smashing the man's throat back against stone. The second lunged with a hooked blade. Eric's caught his wrist, twisted till bone snapped like dry wood, then drove the broken arm into the third man's ribs. The crack was wet and final. The leader recovered with a curse, yanking a pouch from his belt and flinging gray dust into the air. It bloomed like storm cloud. Mia's lungs seized. Wolfsbane. Eric shoved the wounded man into the dust, using him as both shield and club. He took a knife to the ribs. Mia saw the bloom of red, clean and shocking, and didn't falter. He hit the leader once, twice, each strike a hammer, then caught the man's throat and pinned him to the doorframe. Yield, Eric said. The man spat blood. The alpha wants his debt. He'll cut the wolf out of her and wear it as a... Eric squeezed. The man's eyes bulged. Heels beat a frantic tattoo against the stone. Eric's face was calm, almost bored, save for the heat in his eyes that said burn. Mia's curse throbbed, a hornet nest under skin, warning of some wrong turning. She lurched up, leg screaming, and grabbed Eric's wrist. Enough. His attention slid to her, the world narrowing to the point of her fingers on his pulse. For a heartbeat she felt him the way her wolf would have, mass, temperature, the gravity of his will. He released the man. The hunter crumpled, gasping. Take your dead, Eric said, voice quiet. Carry this message, step in my shadow again, and you won't step out. They dragged their broken, choking leader into the trees, leaving a smear of blood like a signature. The ward hum faded. Eric's braced a hand on the wall, breath steady, not quite hiding the way crimson leaked through his shirt. Mia swayed, heat and panic rising. You're hurt, she said. So are you. I don't heal fast anymore. The admission scraped. Eric's mouth flattened. You will. She almost laughed. Did the part where I can't shift fail to impress you? He peeled his ruined shirt away from the wound and reached for the liquor. The sigils don't kill wolves. They cage them. There are keys. Her pulse stuttered. You know one. I know the locks. He poured liquor over his ribs, didn't so much as flinch. Keys we can learn. Why help me? The question came out smaller than she intended. Eric's recorked the bottle, looked up. Something flickered behind his eyes, something that felt like a door opening onto heat and memory. Because the wastes don't lie, he said. I felt you cross my boundary, and the ash woke. The ash woke, she echoed. It remembered its king, Eric said, almost mocking himself. Or its mistake. He turned away to bank the fire, but Mia felt the truth of it shiver through the floor. The ruined tower seemed to listen. In the stones, in the char, an old thing stirred like embers teased by breath. Sleep, he ordered. Dawn won't be kind. Dawn rarely is. She lay down, smelling smoke and iron, too drained to argue further. The edges of the world went soft. As she drifted, she thought she felt a presence curl around her like a second skin, vast, watchful, not unkind. When she woke, the tower had a roof. Not a literal roof, sky still arched pale and bruised where the upper stones had fallen away, but the room held more than it had before. The hides were mended, the draft stilled, the hearthstones fitted tighter. For a delirious instant Mia thought Eric's had worked through the night. Then she touched the mortar and felt the thrum under it, like a heartbeat trapped in rock. You're staring at the walls, Eric said from the doorway. He carried a bundle of snares and a haunch of something smoked, hair damp from a river wash. They're different. The wastes listen, he said, as if that explained the way a ruin could decide to be less ruined. Eat. He tossed her a wrapped cake, grain, seed, salt. The kind of food made by someone who lived alone long enough to stop caring about variety. She chewed, leg throbbing dully, mind snagged on the words keys and locks. What do you know about priestcraft? She asked. Enough to hate it. He set the snares aside and crouched, drawing a shape into the ash with 2 fingers, a circle, split by a jagged line, crossed by 3 bars. Bindings need anchors. Break enough of them, the cage sags. And where are mine? His gaze flicked to her neck. They tend to tie them to history. Names. Oaths. Places of first blood. Mia looked at the sigils ghosting her skin and felt cold. First blood had been a riverbank, a winter moon. She remembered the wind in the pines the night she turned 16, the run with her childhood friend who became a stranger when the Alpha chose him for her. She remembered saying no. North, she said. Eric's nodded once. Of course. I won't go back. The panic was immediate, bright-edged, raw. I won't crawl to them and ask for mercy. Eric's lifted his head, scenting the air, the line of his throat suddenly very wolf. Mercy's not on the table. He looked back at her. Revenge might be. Heat flushed her face. I don't want revenge. You want your life. His tone didn't judge. Sometimes the words are neighbors. She stared at the ash-drawn circle. You said keys can be learned. They can. Teach me. Something in him tightened, almost a flinch. He rose, paced to the fire, and for the first time she saw it clearly, the distance he kept wasn't rudeness. It was armor. I swore I'd never lead again, he said quietly. No pack. No bond. No crown. I'm not asking for a crown, she said. I'm asking not to be caged. He stood there long enough for her to hear her own heartbeat miscount. Then he came back, knelt, and dipped his thumb in ash. Gently, he pressed a mark over her sternum, a simple line. The touch felt absurdly intimate. Rule 1, Eric said. A cage is a ritual. Freedom must be one too. You'll learn the half shift. Impossible, she whispered. Good, he said. Impossible things keep us honest. He took her hands and set them on her own ribs. Breathe. Think of your bones as doors. Not to break, just to open a hand's width. Enough for nails. Enough for teeth. Mia closed her eyes. Her wolf had lived in her bones like music once, now it was a muffled drum. She followed his voice. Inhale. Exhale. Find the seam. She reached for the old hinge in the thumb's base, the first joint that used to itch before claws slid out like rain. Nothing. She pushed harder. Pain sparked, then guttered. Slow, Eric's murmured. You're not pulling a sword. You're unlatching a window. Something shifted. Not a claw, something smaller, meaner, pressure under the nail like a storm bloom. She gasped. A sliver of keratin edged into a point, then retreated with a snap when the sigils flared hot. It fought back, she said, dizzy with triumph and loss. It will again, Eric said, and for the first time there was approval in his voice. We make it fight every day until it learns our names. Names, she repeated. He hesitated, then brushed his thumb across the ash mark on her chest once more, slow as a vow. Mia, he said. Say mine. Her mouth went dry. Eric's. The watchtower stones gave a small, pleased sigh. Outside, wind ran a hand through the scorched pines. Her curse burned, yes, but under it something else uncoiled, thin and bright, the way dawn insists even through smoke. He released her hands. Again. She set her fingers to her ribs and breathed. The world narrowed to ash, bone, voice. She tried, failed, tried again. On the 6th breath the nail slid half a fraction, just enough to bite. She hissed. He smiled, quick and fierce, as if the smallest victory mattered like blood. Once more, Eric said, and Mia lifted her hand to try when the ward hum shivered, sharper than before, like a blade drawn against stone, and the tower's shadow twisted toward the door. The ward's hum scraped through Mia's bones. She froze, hand still pressed to her ribs, as the tower itself seemed to inhale. The shadows along the wall lengthened, then bent toward the doorway like dogs scenting prey. Eric's rose in silence. His shoulders squared, his presence changing, sharpening, not the calm predator from before but something bigger, something that could wear crowns and carry wars. He didn't snarl, didn't bristle. He simply was. Mia's curse flared, a burning web that locked her muscles. Fear, yes, but not only hers. The glyphs were reacting, hot and panicked, as if they knew who approached. The door creaked. A figure stepped across the threshold. She was tall, robed in layers of pale cloth that shimmered faintly even in the fire's weak light. A hood shadowed her face, but the scent hit Mia like a fist: incense, wax, and bitter herbs. Priestcraft. Eric's stance shifted. You've come far, seer. His voice was quiet steel. The woman pushed back her hood. Her hair was white as winter ash, braided with beads of bone. Her eyes were milk-clouded, pupils like pinpricks, but they fixed on Mia with unerring accuracy. The cursed one, the seer breathed. The wolf silenced. A tool gone astray. Mia's throat locked. I'm not your tool. The seer tilted her head, listening to something no one else could hear. Then she smiled, thin and sharp. You will be. Eric's moved before the last syllable finished, stepping between them. No, he said. The single word landed like stone. You'd defy the mark of the elders again? The seer asked, her gaze sliding to him. Did you not learn what exile costs? I learned enough to burn a kingdom down, he said. Try me. The seer lifted a hand. Her nails were blackened, her skin inked with threads of the same sigils that bound Mia. The glyphs on Mia's spine flared in response, searing hot, and she gasped, dropping to her knees. The air thickened with power, heavy as tar. Mia, Eric said, not looking back. His voice cut through the pain like a line to hold on to. Remember the hinge. Remember the window. Her hands clawed at the floor. Every instinct screamed to curl in, to surrender to the fire gnawing her nerves. But his words lodged like hooks in her chest. She forced her breath slow. Inhale. Exhale. The curse burned hotter. Break, the seer commanded. Submit. No, Mia rasped, though her vision swam. She pressed inward, to that seam she'd touched before, the one that had given her a taste of claw. This time she shoved past the burn. The curse shrieked inside her like glass shattering, but something slipped free. A sliver of her wolf, sharp and furious. Her fingertip split, claw edging out. Eric bared his teeth in a grin that wasn't human. There she is. The seer's smile faltered. Impossible. Get used to that word, Eric said. Then he moved. He met the seer with a speed that blurred flesh and shadow. She flung her hand wide, glyphs blazed into the air, lines of light forming a net. Eric hit it headlong. The ward sparked, shrieked, but held. Mia forced herself upright, claw dripping a single bead of blood. She dragged it across the floor, carving into the ash circle Eric's had drawn earlier. The mark bled light, humming like a struck chord. The curse fought her, but the claw was hers, however small. She slashed the circle open. Energy snapped, a sound like bone splitting. The net around Eric's faltered. He tore through it, seized the seer's wrist, and wrenched it until the glyph scrawled on her skin cracked like dried paint. She screamed, staggering back. The tower shuddered with the echo. Its stones seemed to lean closer, listening. Eric's didn't finish her. He threw her against the wall hard enough to rattle dust from the rafters. Carry a message, he said, voice low, deadly. Tell your masters the ash wastes aren't theirs to reap. Blood dripped from the seer's mouth. She laughed, soft and broken. You can't keep her. She is already ours. Then she dissolved into smoke, vanishing like a snuffed candle. The silence after was sharp. Mia sank back to the floor, breath coming in ragged gasps. Her claw receded, leaving only the sting of broken nail and the ache of something half-born. Eric's knelt beside her. You did it. She almost laughed, bitter and wild. For what? One claw. She nearly killed me. For one claw, he said, steady, certain. Next time, two. And then teeth. His hand brushed her shoulder, warm and grounding. Against the hollow left by the seer's curse, the bond stirred again, dangerous, undeniable. Mia swallowed hard. And after that? After that, Eric said, amber eyes locking onto hers, we burn them all. Days blurred into a rhythm of survival and defiance. Morning meant the tower waking with them. Stones shifting subtly, sealing drafts, easing cracks, a place once ruined remembering how to be shelter. Afternoon meant the hunt, Eric setting snares, teaching Mia how to read the ash-heavy wind for prey that was more shadow than flesh. Night meant training, ritual after ritual, each one a pry bar against the curse. Mia's progress came in fragments, each one earned like blood money. One night it was a claw. Another, a flash of canines pressing against her lips before the sigils forced them back. Once, in a moment of furious refusal, her pupils burned gold for a heartbeat, and Eric's smile, sharp, proud, was more terrifying than any curse. But it wasn't just power she reclaimed. The bond grew with every lesson. She felt it coil between them when he corrected her stance, his hand steadying her hip, when he growled low in his chest to help her match his breathing, when he spoke her name in the dark, low enough to make the tower's wards hum in answer. Mia fought it as much as she fought the curse. Bonds meant chains. She'd been bound once, and it had left her broken. But the bond didn't care. It whispered, mine, whenever he looked at her, and her heart, traitorous thing, whispered back. On the seventh night, under a swollen moon that painted the waste silver, Eric's had her stand barefoot in the tower's courtyard. The stones there were scorched black, the earth sterile, a place where fire had once eaten everything to bone. This ground remembers ash, Eric said, circling her. Your wolf is ash now too. What do we do with ash, Mia? Scatter it, she said, sweat dampening her hairline. Or feed it to flame. He nodded. Tonight you open more than a window. Tonight you breathe the ember into fire. She closed her eyes. Inhale. Exhale. She reached for the hinges of her bones. Her claws pushed, harder now, scraping against the sigils. The curse struck back, white-hot, pain tearing through her chest. Don't fight it, Eric said, his voice rough but steady. Turn it. How? She broke off with a cry as her shoulder seized. The glyphs there blazed, searing like a brand. Pain is fuel, he said, stepping closer. Ash's memory. Feed it. Say your name. Her knees hit the stone. Mia. Say it. Mia. Louder, stronger, tearing through her own throat. I am Mia. The glyph screamed. She pushed. Something inside her gave way. Her hand flared into claws, all 5 this time, curved and gleaming in moonlight. Her teeth lengthened, a snarl ripping from her chest that didn't sound human. The bond surged so hard she swayed with it, raw and wild. Eric's eyes burned gold. For an instant she saw him not as exile, not as man, but as Alpha, the king of fire the stories had whispered about, standing as if the whole ruined world were his to command. She fell forward. He caught her, claws digging shallow lines into his arm. He didn't flinch. There, he said softly, fierce as victory. There's my wolf. Her head dropped against his chest. She was shaking, half from pain, half from the echo of something older than curses. His heart beat steady beneath her ear, not slow, not fast, just strong. The tower exhaled a gust of hot air, like a forge bellows. Outside, the forest bent in the windless night. And somewhere, far off, a horn sounded. Mia's blood iced. That's Northwoods, Eric's finished grimly. He lifted her chin with a blood-striped hand. They're coming. Her claws trembled, half receding under the curse's backlash. "I'm not ready." "No wolf is," he said. "But war never waits." The horn call rolled through the wastes again, low and mournful, carrying a challenge older than either of them. Mia's claws shuddered back into dull nails, the curse gnawing at her bones with renewed hunger. She sagged against Eric's, but he steadied her, his grip unyielding. "They'll come in force," he said, gaze on the silver horizon. "Not just hounds this time. Wolves. Bound to your old alpha's will." Mia's chest tightened. "He'll send them to drag me back." Eric's mouth curved in something sharp. "Then they'll have to try." He led her inside, moving with quick precision. He stacked weapons, knives of silvered steel, spears capped in obsidian glass. The tower itself seemed to brace, its stones settling into a ready stillness. Mia limped after him, every step biting fire into her stitched leg. "I can't fight them all. I can barely fight myself." Eric's turned, eyes bright with heat. "Then don't. Fight for one. For the wolf that is yours. Every strike you land, every breath you take, is defiance enough." She wanted to believe him. But the horn sounded again, closer now. Wolves were fast. They would be here soon. Eric's pressed a blade into her hand. The hilt was wrapped in worn leather, shaped for use, not beauty. "This is yours until the claws come when you call them." Her fingers closed around it. Heavy, but steady. "And if they don't?" "Then I'll bleed beside you," he said simply. "That is what bond means." The word hit her like a spark in tinder. Bond. She tried to shove it aside, but it clung, undeniable. The first growl echoed from the tree-line before she could answer. Shapes stalked from the shadows, wolves, 6 of them, pelts dark as tar, eyes burning red with ritual fire. Behind them strode a man draped in stagbone armor, his jaw painted with blood. Mia knew that face. "Jareth," she whispered. Her once betrothed. The son she was supposed to obey. He smiled, cruel and perfect. "Mia. You've strayed far from home." His gaze slid to Eric's. "And you've chosen poorly in company. An exile. A ghost king." Eric's didn't move, but the air thickened around him, heavy as a storm. "Careful, pup. Ghosts have a way of clawing back from the grave." Jareth's wolves fanned out, circling. "Hand her over, Vale, and maybe we'll let you keep your head." Mia's grip tightened on the blade. Her pulse thundered. She wanted to shrink back, to let the curse smother her. But Eric's voice cut through again, steady and sharp. "Say your name," he murmured. Mia lifted the blade. "I am Mia." The wolves lunged. The first came straight for her. She swung the blade up, clumsy but desperate. Steel met fur, slicing shallow across the wolf's shoulder. It howled, snapping back, and her own blood sang with the strike. The second wolf barreled in from the side, but Eric's was already there. He moved like shadow-given muscle, catching the beast mid-leap and slamming it into the ground. His canines flashed, his fists breaking bones with brutal economy. Jareth watched, arms folded, expression amused. "Still fighting fate, Mia? You never did know when to bend." Her chest burned, the sigils trying to choke her into stillness. But she remembered Eric's words, "A cage is a ritual. Freedom must be won too." She inhaled. Exhaled. The hinges of her bones strained. A claw slid free. Just one, but sharp as promise. She met Jareth's gaze across the ruin. "I don't bend." The wolves came again. The courtyard erupted into chaos. Snarls, steel, the wet crack of bodies colliding against stone. Mia's blade flashed clumsily, not yet an extension of herself, but enough to keep the first wolf at bay. Her claw, one single, traitorous claw, tore a shallow groove across its muzzle. It howled and reeled, fury in its eyes. Eric's fought with the economy of a man who had been violence too long to waste it. He didn't shift, not fully, but his movements were wolf-true, low, brutal, precise. A shoulder drove a wolf into the wall so hard the stones shook. His fist snapped a jaw sideways. Every strike was a punctuation mark on the sentence of his exile. Jareth advanced slowly, savoring, his wolves doing the work. You should have been mine, Mia, he called over the din. You would have had safety. Place. A name. Mia spun, barely ducking another lunge. Her blade caught the wolf's flank this time, deeper. Blood sprayed hot across her arm. She gasped, chest searing as the glyphs flared, punishing her for daring to fight. I already have a name, she snarled through clenched teeth. It isn't yours. Pain scorched her spine, but she pushed harder. She thought of the ember, the hinge, the window. The sigils clawed back, burning, but her wolf shoved once, twice, until her nails burst into claws across both hands. The curse screamed, but the world shifted. Sound sharpened, sense tore into her lungs. Ash, blood, fear. Her muscles tightened with strength she'd forgotten. The next wolf leapt, and Mia met it not with steel but with claw. She slashed across its throat, and hot red fountained across the blackened stones. Eric's eyes burned gold at the sight. For a heartbeat, pride flashed through his fury. There, he growled, voice like thunder. There's the wolf. Jareth's smirk faltered. You. Mia lunged at him, blade forgotten, claws gleaming. He blocked her with a sweep of his arm, strength coiled with priestcraft. Sigils flared across his forearm, slamming her back into the wall. Pain ripped through her. You think you can fight me? Jareth snarled, stepping close. His breath reeked of ritual smoke. You couldn't even fight your own pack. Eric struck him from the side. The two alphas collided with a force that cracked stone. Eric's hand closed on Jareth's throat, teeth bared in something between a grin and a snarl. She doesn't fight alone. The bond surged like fire between them, Mia's heart hammering in rhythm with his. It burned past curse and fear, a tether of heat and certainty. She shoved off the wall, claws bared, and joined him. Together, they dragged Jareth to the ash-stained stones. Wolves snapped and clawed around them, but Mia felt only the fight, the rush of power breaking through cracks in her cage. Jareth choked, blood running down his jaw, eyes wide with something that looked a little like fear. You should have bent, he rasped. I told you, Mia hissed, pressing her claws against his chest sigils. I don't bend. And she carved. The glyphs ripped like old cloth. Jareth screamed, the sound raw enough to tear the night open. His wolves faltered, their eyes flickering from red to dazed gold. The bond broke like a snapped chain, and the pack collapsed into whimpers, rolling back from the fight. Mia staggered, her claws dripping, the curse flaring and faltering all at once. Eric's caught her, steadying her before she fell. His chest heaved, his eyes glowing molten. You did it, he said, rough and certain. The tower stones thrummed in approval, as if the land itself had been waiting. Mia sagged against him, the taste of ash and blood sharp on her tongue. For the first time since the curse, she felt her wolf not as memory, but as breath, alive and burning. And Jareth, broken and bleeding at their feet, looked up with eyes full of hatred. This isn't over. Eric's teeth flashed. No, he said softly. It's just begun. The courtyard smelled of iron and smoke. Wolves lay strewn across the blackened stones, some limping, some groaning, none daring to rise. The night was full of their whimpers, the soft whine of creatures unmoored now that their alpha's bond had been cut. Mia knelt, her claws still extended, trembling with exhaustion. Every breath was a war between curse and freedom, the sigils burning and faltering like a dying fire. Eric stood over her, broad shoulders heaving, his chest striped in blood, both his and not his. He looked at the defeated wolves, his gaze sharp as a blade. Go, he commanded, voice ringing with something old, something sovereign. You are unbound. Leave while you still breathe. One by one, the wolves staggered to their paws and slunk into the trees. None met his eyes. None looked at Mia. They disappeared into the silver-dark woods, their absence leaving a silence so thick it pressed against her ears. Only Jareth remained, broken at their feet. His chest rose and fell in ragged gasps, blood dripping from the gouges Mia's claws had left. His mouth twisted in something between defiance and madness. "She's yours for now, Vale," he spat, crimson streaking his teeth. "But the priests won't stop. You've drawn their gaze again. You'll both burn for it." Eric's crouched beside him, every line of his body a warning. "You mistake me for a man who fears fire." His hand clamped around Jareth's jaw. For a breath, Mia thought he would crush it. Instead, he leaned close, voice low and certain. "Carry this back to your father. Tell him the Ash Alpha rises. Tell him the cage he built has cracks." He released Jareth with a shove. The younger man coughed, blood spattering the stones, and dragged himself away into the forest, disappearing with the others. The silence that followed was heavier than any battle. Mia sagged, her claws retracting at last, leaving her hands bloodied and shaking. Eric's turned to her, eyes still burning gold, and for the first time she saw not just exile, not just fury, but vulnerability. A man who had sworn never to lead, standing as if the crown had already fallen back onto his head. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered, chest aching with the afterburn of magic. His brow furrowed. "What? Claimed it. The Ash Alpha. You said you swore never again." Eric studied her, then the tower, then the scarred ground that had drunk their blood. Oaths break easier than bones. And tonight, his gaze softened, just for her. "Tonight, I wasn't the only one who led." Heat flushed through her, raw and disbelieving. "I'm no alpha." "You fought your curse and a pack in the same breath," he said. "If that isn't alpha, then the word has no meaning." Mia's throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to shove the weight of that title away. But part of her, the part that had ripped Jareth's sigils apart, recognized the truth in his words. Her knees gave. Eric's caught her, lowering her carefully until her back rested against the tower wall. His hand lingered at her cheek, thumb brushing away a streak of blood. "You did more than survive," he said, voice low. "You chose. That matters." Her heart thudded. The bond tugged, fierce and relentless, burning hotter now that they had fought side by side. She felt it pulling her closer, urging her to close the small space between them, to admit what had been clawing at her chest since the night they met. Instead she whispered, "What now?" Eric's gaze searched hers, unreadable but intense. "Now the war comes. The priests won't forgive what we've done. And your pack will not forgive you." Mia swallowed hard. "So we fight?" He nodded. "So we fight. Together." The bond pulsed, a thread of fire twined between them. Mia let herself lean into his hand at last, just enough to feel the warmth of his skin against hers. The tower hummed low, almost content. And in the ruins of ash, something new began to take root. Dawn came blood-red over the ash wastes. The sky looked as if it had been painted in fire, streaks of crimson searing through the gray. Mia woke to its glow pouring into the courtyard, her body aching in every place she could name and more she couldn't. Her leg throbbed from the old wound, her spine burned with the curse's backlash, but beneath all of that was something else, a restless hum, a wolf pacing inside her bones, alive despite the sigils still clawing her skin. Eric's was already awake. He stood bare-chested at the tower's edge, blood dried in dark streaks across his ribs, his profile carved against the rising sun. His scars looked almost luminous in the morning light, old wars etched into flesh, none of them hidden. Mia watched him in silence, heart caught between awe and unease. The bond was stronger now, threads of heat pulling at her whenever she looked at him. It was more than attraction, more than instinct, it was inevitability. And inevitability terrified her. "You should be resting," she said finally. His head turned, eyes finding hers across the ruin. Even tired, they glowed faint amber. "So should you." She managed a half-smile. I was. He came back to her, dropping into a crouch so they were eye level. Let me see. He reached for her leg, careful, deliberate. His hands were rough, warm, steady as he unwrapped the stained bandage and inspected the stitched wound. Healing, but slower than it should. I told you, she murmured. The curse dulls everything. It doesn't dull your will. His thumb brushed the edge of the scar, not quite tender, not quite clinical. That's stronger than any wolf I've seen. Her chest tightened. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm. She trailed off, unable to find the word. Not prey. Not fragile. Something else. Something larger than she was ready to admit. Eric's gaze held hers, unflinching. Like you're mine? The bond surged so hard she sucked in a sharp breath. Her claws prickled at her fingertips. Every instinct screamed to close the space between them. And yet, fear licked cold across her spine, memories of binding circles and false promises. I can't, she whispered, shaking her head. Not yet. He didn't flinch, didn't push. He simply sat back, giving her space without retreating. Then not yet, he said, voice even. But the bond is there. It won't vanish because you fear it. Silence stretched, broken only by the crackle of the fire. The tower hummed, listening, its stones warm under her palms. Finally Mia drew in a shaky breath. The priests. They'll come. Eric nodded. They'll come harder than your pack. With rituals, glyphs, hunters. They'll want you broken again. And me, dead. Then we need to be ready. His mouth curved, not quite a smile. We will be. For the next days, preparation became their world. Eric showed her how to breathe through the pain when the sigils flared, how to lean into the cracks instead of recoiling. He taught her to fight with both claw and blade, the steel filling the gap when her wolf faltered. And Mia, for her part, taught herself to trust. To trust the bond's pull when it st. At night, when the tower hummed low and the fire burned to embers, they sat close enough that the heat between them was a third presence. Neither touched. Neither dared. But the silence was charged, every breath tasting of what they hadn't yet claimed. Mia lay awake one night, staring at the cracked ceiling, her heart pounding. She whispered into the dark, if I give in, if I claim it. Eric's voice came quiet, steady from the other side of the fire. Then the bond will root. Deep. Forever. She swallowed. And if I can't carry it? Then I will. The words struck her deeper than any promise. She closed her eyes, claws pricking her palms, and for the first time let herself imagine what it would be to let go of fear, to let herself burn instead of break. The priests did not announce themselves with horns the way wolves did. They came with silence, with stillness. On the fourth night after Jareth's retreat, Mia woke to the tower humming too high, too sharp, as though the stones themselves trembled. Eric's was already standing, knife in hand, his gaze fixed on the doorway. They're here. Mia scrambled up, claws itching at her fingertips, the curse pulsing like a storm beneath her skin. How many? He didn't answer immediately. He was listening. The air outside had gone thick, muffled, as if the forest itself had been smothered. Finally he said, enough. The first strike came without warning. A line of burning glyphs seared across the threshold, light so bright it stabbed Mia's eyes. The stone screamed, words unraveling like torn cloth. The tower shuddered. Figures stepped through the glow, priests in robes inked with black sigils, their hands dripping fire and shadow both. At their head was the seer who had marked Mia before. Her arm was bound in a sling now, her face drawn but smiling. You thought breaking one chain freed you, she said. But the cage was built to last. Her eyes rolled back, and her voice dropped into a register that wasn't hers. The wolf must kneel. The curse inside Mia writhed, searing. She doubled over with a cry, claws slicing the stone floor. Eric's caught her before she hit the ground, his arm braced around her waist. "Stay with me," he growled into her hair. I can't," the glyphs burned too hot, dragging her down, crushing her chest. Her wolf clawed at the cage but couldn't push free. Eric's grip tightened. "Then we burn it." The bond surged between them, wild, demanding. Mia felt it pull, not gently but like a current trying to drag her under. Fear flared, if she let it, it would consume her. But the alternative was the curse eating her alive, priests dragging her back into silence. She met Eric's eyes. They glowed gold, furious and unyielding. "If we claim it," she whispered, voice breaking, "there's no undoing." "Then let it be done." The bond flared. She let go. It was fire, all fire. Heat pouring into every nerve, burning away fear, stitching bone to bone, breath to breath. She felt his wolf surge into hers, hers into his, two flames braiding into one blaze. The curse shrieked, the glyph splitting like glass under the weight of it. Mia screamed as her body tore, not breaking, but becoming. Fur rippled across her arms, claws extended, teeth lengthened, her wolf exploding free in a rush of fury and relief. She shifted. Fully. For the first time since the curse. The priest staggered, their net of glyphs unraveling under the shockwave. The seer's smile broke, her voice cracking. "Impossible." Eric shifted too, bones snapping, fur spilling like shadow fire until the Ash Alpha stood beside her in wolf form, massive, dark, eyes like molten gold. The tower roared with them. Together they leapt. Mia's wolf was smaller than his, lean and fast, her fur pale silver streaked with ash dark. She moved like breath, claws tearing into priestly robes, teeth sinking deep into an arm that glowed with sigils. Blood sprayed, acrid and hot, and the glyph sputtered out. Eric's was devastation. His jaws crushed a priest's ribcage, his weight snapping another in half against the stone wall. Fire blossomed in their wake, not consuming but cleansing, as though the wastes themselves remembered what it meant to follow their king. The seer tried to flee, glyphs blazing around her in frantic patterns, but Mia was faster. She lunged, her wolf's teeth closing around the woman's shoulder, dragging her down. The seer screamed, striking out with a knife of black light. It raked Mia's side, hot and brutal. Eric's was there in an instant, jaws closing around the seer's throat. He didn't kill her, he held her pinned, his growl vibrating through the stones. Mia loomed above her, chest heaving, silver fur streaked red. Her wolf wanted blood. Wanted to end it. But some deeper part whispered restraint. She forced her teeth to unclench. The seer's eyes rolled back, her voice dropping again into that too low register. "If you rise together, the kingdom falls to ash. If you burn the cage, the world burns with it." Eric's pressed harder, growl deepening, but Mia shook her head, forcing words through her wolf's throat. "Then let it burn." The seer's eyes widened. Fear, this time. Real. And then she vanished into smoke again, leaving only the echo of her scream. The courtyard fell silent but for the crackle of dying glyph fire. Mia collapsed to her knees, panting, her wolf receding only halfway, ears still pointed, eyes still golden. Eric shifted back beside her, bloodied but unbowed, his hand closing around hers. The bond hummed between them, steady and fierce. "You're free," he said, voice raw. "Do you feel it?" She did. The curse was still there, sigils faint against her skin, but weakened, cracked. And her wolf was awake inside her, prowling, alive. Her chest ached. Her throat burned. But she laughed, wild and breathless. Yes. Eric's mouth curved, and in the ruin of ash, he looked more king than exile. The wastes were not quiet after the battle. They breathed. Mia felt it as she staggered across the courtyard, her body still half wolf, fur fading in patches to bare skin, claws retreating reluctantly. The stones beneath her feet thrummed like the afterbeat of a drum. Ash stirred where none had lain before, curling in little eddies around her ankles. Eric stood at the shattered doorway, shoulders squared, surveying the horizon as though expecting another wave of priests. His torso was bloodied, streaks drying along the scars already etched into his flesh, but he held himself tall, unshaken, sovereign. The tower seemed to lean into him, walls settling, wards humming louder, a fortress remembering how to stand. "You feel it," Mia whispered, pressing a palm against her chest where the bond burned like a brand. "Don't you?" Eric's amber gaze slid to her. "The land remembers. It's alive." She looked down at the stones, the ash swirling in patterns that seemed almost intentional. "It's answering you." He didn't deny it. His jaw tightened, his eyes hooded. "It's answering us." The words struck deep. For a moment Mia let herself imagine it, the tower rebuilt, the wastes reborn, wolves gathering again not to hunt her but to follow. Her wolf stirred restlessly, hungry for more. Then the thought of chains crashed in. Oaths, circles, curses. Her breath hitched. "No," she said, too fast, too sharp. "I won't be bound again." Eric's turned fully toward her. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was steady. "You are not bound. You are claimed, and claiming cuts both ways." The bond flared at his words, heat racing through her veins. Her claws pricked her palms. Her wolf pressed forward, eager, reckless. She wanted to step into him, to close the breath of space between them, to seal the bond fully with tooth and blood. Instead she backed away, shaking her head. "If I let it root, if I let this grow, what happens when the priests come again? What happens when the pack see us? They'll kneel." The way he said it, calm and absolute, sent a chill down her spine. Not arrogance. Certainty. Mia's pulse thundered. She remembered the seer's voice, that haunting warning, "If you rise together, the kingdom falls to ash." She looked at Eric's, exile, warrior, alpha, man, and saw the truth of it. If they embraced the bond fully, they would be unstoppable. But unstoppable things often ended in ruin. Her chest ached with the weight of choice. Eric stepped closer, slow enough to give her space to retreat, close enough for his heat to brush her skin. He lifted a blood-streaked hand and cupped her jaw, thumb tracing lightly along the edge of her cheek. "I swore I would never lead again," he murmured. "But oaths burn away. You've already set me alight." Her throat closed. Her wolf surged. The tower hummed louder, waiting. The wastes themselves seemed to lean in. Mia closed her eyes, trembling. "If we do this, there's no turning back." His voice dropped, low and certain. "Then forward is the only way." That night, the wastes whispered. Ash drifted like snow across the tower's courtyard, glowing faintly with heat that didn't scorch. Wolves howled in the far distance, not in challenge, but in recognition. And in the heart of the ruin, Mia sat beside Eric's, their hands clasped, the bond pulsing steady as a heartbeat. She didn't claim him yet, not fully. But the choice hovered close, closer than breath, closer than fear. The kingdom was stirring. And kingdoms never woke quietly. The first wolves came at dawn 2 nights later. Mia sensed them before she saw them, the prickle of foreign scents on the wind, the way her wolf bristled under her skin. She stood at the tower's edge, bare feet on the black stone, as shapes emerged from the tree-lean. Wolves, a dozen at least, their pelts mottled gray and brown, their eyes wary. They didn't attack. They bowed their heads. One shifted, for receding into skin, bones cracking until a man stood naked in the ash. His hair was tangled, his chest scarred, but his voice carried clear. "We smelled the fire. We smelled him." His gaze flicked to Eric's, who stood tall beside her, arms crossed. "Is it true? The Ash Alpha rises?" Eric's jaw tightened. His silence was answer enough. The wolves murmured, shifting uneasily. Some looked afraid. Others looked hungry, desperate. Mia's stomach knotted. She felt their eyes on her too, questioning, weighing. The cursed one. The she-wolf who broke the cage. She swallowed hard. We didn't summon you. The man's gaze snapped to her. No. But you lit the pyre all the same. Wolves without packs will come. The broken. The outcast. They will follow. Eric's finally spoke, his voice rough stone. I don't lead. Try telling that to the land, the man said, baring his teeth in something between a grin and a grimace. It remembers you, Vale. Whether you like it or not. Mia felt the bond tug, the heat between her and Eric surging as though to underscore the man's words. She pressed a hand against her chest, trying to steady her breath. More wolves arrived in the days that followed. Not packs, not armies, fragments. Loners. Outcasts. They gathered in the wastes, drawn by whispers of fire and the scent of something impossible. By the third dawn, there were dozens camped at the edges of the tower, waiting, watching. Eric's grew more restless with each new arrival. He paced the courtyard at night, muscles tight, as if wrestling a storm inside his ribs. Mia watched him, her own chest a mirror of his conflict. They're here for you, she said one evening, the firelight flickering between them. They're here for a crown I buried, he growled. Her wolf stirred. Maybe it isn't buried anymore. His gaze snapped to hers, fierce and unyielding. You think you want this? She hesitated. I don't know what I want. But I know I won't be caged again. And if the only way forward is to fight with you, then, she broke off, breath hitching. Then maybe forward is a crown. The bond flared so hot it stole her breath. Eric's eyes burned gold in the dark. If we claim it, Mia, there's no stepping back. Alpha and mate. Pack and kingdom. Blood and ash. Her claws pricked her palms. Her wolf held inside her, begging to leap, to take. Fear tangled with longing until she thought she might split apart. Before she could answer, the tower's wards screamed. Light seared across the horizon. Dozens of glyphs burned in the sky like brands, forming a net that spanned the treeline. The wolves outside yelped and scattered as figures marched from the woods, priests, more than before, their robes inked darker, their chants already thick in the air. At their head strode not the seer, but a man clad in gold-thread robes, his face painted bone white. He lifted a staff crowned with antlers, and his voice thundered across the wastes. Eric's Vale. Cursed she-wolf. By decree of the Elder Council, your bond is forbidden. Your kingdom is ended. Kneel or burn. The glyph net pulsed, tightening. Mia felt the curse inside her shriek, the sigils along her spine sparking with renewed fire. She staggered, dropping to one knee. Eric's caught her arm, hauling her up with raw strength. His eyes were molten. No more cages. The priests raised their staffs. The wolves outside howled, torn between fear and awe. And Mia felt the bond inside her coil, waiting for a choice. Eric leaned close, his forehead pressing to hers. His voice was a promise and a demand. Choose me. Now. Or we both fall. The glyph net tightened, a lattice of light and fire pressing down until the very air felt like molten iron. Mia's lungs seized, her wolf snarling in panic. Every line of the curse blazed hot across her spine, desperate to drag her back into silence. Eric's hands closed over her shoulders, anchoring her. His eyes blazed gold, molten and merciless. Now, Mia. Fear surged through her veins. Not fear of him, fear of herself. Of what the bond would make her. Of the seer's warning, if you rise together, the kingdom falls to ash. But the priest's chant was building, heavy and suffocating, the curse clamping tighter with every syllable. If she didn't choose, there would be no kingdom, no freedom, only chains. Her wolf rose inside her, furious and wild. Choose. Claim. Burn. Mia lifted her head and met Eric's gaze. Mine, she whispered. The word cracked the world open. The bond slammed into place, a torrent of fire and breath and bone. She felt his wolf surge into her veins, massive and dark, wrapping around her like armor. Her own wolf roared in answer, silver fire ripping through every seam of the curse. The sigils along her spine shattered one by one, sparks flying from her skin like breaking chains. Her body tore and remade itself in the same heartbeat. Fur burst across her arms, her back, her chest. Claws arced longer, sharper. Her teeth split her gums with glorious pain. She shifted, not halfway, not hindered, but fully. A silver wolf, lean and bright, streaked with flame at the tips of her fur. Beside her, Eric shifted too, his wolf towering, black as shadow, eyes like burning suns. The bond between them thrummed so hard the stones of the tower hummed in answer, the wastes themselves shivering awake. The glyph net faltered. Priests staggered back, their chant breaking. Mia and Eric leapt together. The priests tried to raise their staffs, glyphs burning hotter, but the wolves were faster. Mia's claws tore through a robe, raking deep into flesh. Eric's jaws closed around a staff, splintering it to ash and sparks. The golden-robed leader raised his antlered staff, shouting words that split the air. A spear of black light shot toward Mia, faster than thought. The bond flared. Eric's moved as if her body were his own, slamming into her side, bearing the strike across his ribs. He snarled, blood spraying, but the wound knit before her eyes, the bond feeding his strength back through her. Her wolf held, silver fire blazing brighter. She launched herself at the leader, jaws closing on his arm. The staff clattered to the stones. Eric's barreled in behind her, crushing him beneath sheer mass. The glyph net shattered with a sound like glass, fragments of light raining down. The wolves at the tree lean lifted their heads and howled, voices rising in a chorus that shook the sky. The priests broke, some fleeing, some collapsing into ash where their glyphs backlashed. The leader writhed under Eric's weight, eyes wide with terror. "You'll destroy everything," he spat. "Your bond will burn the world to cinders." Mia's jaws pressed tighter, hot breath filling her mouth with the taste of blood and smoke. She released him just enough to snarl words through her wolf's throat. "Then let the world burn free." Eric's tore the man's staff in half. The antlers splintered, the glyph sputtering out. The leader screamed, then dissolved into dust that blew away on the wind. The wastes roared. Ash rose in spirals, glowing faintly with heat. The tower thrummed like a living thing, its stones no longer ruin but fortress. Wolves bowed their heads to the firelight, their howls a pledge and a prayer. Mia stood shoulder to shoulder with Eric's, silver and shadow, bond blazing between them. She could feel his heart hammering in her chest, her breath in his lungs, their power woven so tight it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. Not cursed. Not broken. Alpha. And in the silence that followed, she knew the world would come for them. The packs. The priests. The kingdoms beyond the wastes. But she also knew this, they would come as fire. And fire did not kneel. The days that followed carried a strange weight. The priests had scattered, but their warning lingered like smoke. The wolves who had gathered at the edge of the wastes did not leave. They lingered, hunted, slept near the tower, their eyes always turning toward Mia and Eric's with something between reverence and fear. The tower itself grew stronger. Stones knit tighter. New chambers formed where there had been collapse. Fires burned hotter, brighter, as if the ruin had chosen to live again. Mia walked its halls in awe and unease, feeling the hum of bond and ash beneath her feet. At first, she resisted the title whispered by the wolves. Alpha. Alpha of Ash. But each day, more came, broken wolves, scattered wolves, wolves with no packs. They came limping, bleeding, hungry. And each time Mia and Eric's faced them, not with crowns, not with rituals, but with fire and survival, the wolves stayed. Eric's tried to keep his distance. He trained them, fed them, spoke little. But Mia saw how they watched him, how the land itself bent around him like a bowstring waiting for release. And she saw something else, too, how his gaze lingered on her when the wolves bowed their heads to her first, silver fire still streaking her fur. "You were meant for this," he told her one evening, as they stood on the courtyard wall, ash drifting across the horizon like slow snow. "So were you." His jaw tightened. "I swore never again." "But the bond," he broke off, amber eyes fierce and pained. "The bond doesn't care for vows." Mia reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "Then stop fighting it. Stop fighting us." The silence between them hummed louder than the tower. And when Eric's finally pulled her into his arms, when his mouth claimed hers, it was not gentle. It was fire and promise and ruin all at once. That night, they sealed the bond fully, not as accident or survival, but as choice. The wastes themselves seemed to roar approval, ash spiraling high into the dark sky, carrying the scent of wolf and fire into the far-off world. In the moons that followed, the ash waste changed. Wolves gathered in growing numbers, forming not a pack but a kingdom, a place where the outcast and broken could stand unchained. Mia walked among them as Alpha, silver fur glinting under starlight, Eric's at her side, shadow and fire. Together, they forged something new from ruin. The priests struck again, but the glyphs faltered before their bond. Old packs tested them, but their alphas bent knee or bled for the attempt. And each battle only fed the legend, the cursed she-wolf who broke her chains, the exiled king who rose from ash, the bond that could not be broken. Yet Mia knew the seer's warning was not gone. If you rise together, the kingdom falls to ash. Perhaps it was prophecy. Perhaps it was fear. But every time she looked at the wolves gathered in the firelight, scarred and starving but no longer alone, she thought, some kingdoms are worth the burn. One night, standing atop the tower's highest wall, the land stretching endless and dark before her, Mia felt Eric step up behind her, his warmth familiar, steady. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. He pressed his forehead to hers, amber eyes burning. "Not once." Her wolf stirred, content. She smiled, sharp and certain. "Then let the world come." Below them, the wastes howled, dozens of voices woven into one, carried high into the night sky. Not broken. Not cursed. A kingdom reborn in flame. Alpha of ashes. And for the first time, Mia embraced the name as her own. Epilogue. The wastes bloomed in strange ways. Not with flowers, those were still scarce in the ash-black soil, but with life of another kind. Wolves patrolled the ridges, their howls no longer scattered and lonely but layered, braided into something that felt like belonging. The tower no longer stood as ruin, its bones were mended, its walls watchful. Fires burned in every chamber, warmth carried by wolves who had once known only cold. Mia stood at the courtyard's center, looking up at the sky. The moon was full, silver bright. Once, the full moon had been her torment, the night she had felt her wolf clawing at a cage it could not escape. Now, her wolf stood inside her, awake and unbound, humming like a second heartbeat. Eric's joined her, silent as ever, his presence grounding before she even turned to meet his eyes. He wore no crown, no sigil, but he didn't need them. Wolves bowed their heads when he passed. The land itself bent. "You're restless," he said, voice rough but not unkind. Mia exhaled, her breath curling in the cool night air. The seer's words still gnaw at me. That rising together means falling to ash. Eric's gaze followed hers up to the moon. Prophecies are cages. They trap you in fear, make you walk paths you'd never choose otherwise. He looked back at her, eyes molten. "We don't walk in cages anymore." She studied him, the scars across his chest, the weight of fire and shadow he carried without complaint. The bond pulsed between them, steady and strong, not chains but roots. Roots she had chosen. "Do you think this will last?" she asked softly. "The peace, the pack, us?" His mouth curved, fierce and certain. "Nothing lasts. Not kingdoms. Not curses. Not crowns. But fire leaves marks even when it dies. That's enough." Mia smiled, sharp and sure, her wolf stretching under her skin. She stepped close, pressing her forehead to his. Then we'll leave the brightest mark the world has ever seen. From the walls, the wolves began to howl, their voices rising together, wild and unbroken. Mia lifted her head, joining them, her voice weaving into the chorus. Ash drifted on the night air, glowing faintly as if carrying embers of their bond. Not ruin. Not curse. A kingdom reborn, forged from fire, carried by wolves who would not kneel. And at its heart stood two alphas, bound by choice, by love, by flame. Alpha of ashes. The world would come for them. But when it did, it would find fire waiting.